Right. Okay. So I'll be talking to you today about sustainable mobility adoption. And to kick things off, we're going to do something interactive right away. Everyone's going to be involved in this, so get ready. If it all works out technology-wise. Right. There we are. Can everyone see a big QR code and a lovely email address on their screen? Well, I hope so. At the moment, someone's handing me a microphone. Shall we just go with whatever works? Right. Okay. I will give you a minute or two just to get out your lovely smartphones or whatever devices you're using and just scan that QR code or follow that link and type in the code, and we'll get started in just a few minutes.
Did you all get my tea setup? Did you all?
Yeah, I'm the one spamming the thumbs up.
Okay, me too. Yeah.
Thank you for all the likes. I'm seeing them coming up, and it's a very new experience for me to see all these wonderful likes appearing on my screen. I've never used this before. You see, I'm still in the dark ages, so it's quite new for me. Although I imagine lots of you guys are getting this every day. You know, in your lectures, all this interactive stuff. Anyway, how's about that? Let's give it a go. Right, in front of you, there are two cars. And what I'd like you to do is choose either car A or car B, whichever takes your fancy. Now, car A, oh, quick off the mark. Car A, 60 miles per hour in 5 seconds, range 300 miles, refuel time 8 hours, price $55,000. No carbon emissions. Car B, 60 miles per hour in 10 seconds, range 640 miles, refuel time 5 minutes, price about $33,000, and there's some carbon emissions as well. So let's give you another minute just to send in those lovely votes. Is it going to be car A or car B? Which do you like the look of? I didn't expect it to be this close. Are going down a bit. There we go. Let's have a chat about this. So by the looks of it, the green bar round about now is about twice as high as the red bar. Now, you might be wondering, where did I get car A and car B from? Well, I looked at the website for What Car magazine. That's how I decide how to buy a car, really. And I noticed that at the top two for 2014, we had a gasoline car, that's car B, and then an electric car, car A. So think of this as just like a choice between the current technologies that are in play at the moment. And looks like about car B seems to be the pragmatic preference, although good showing for car A as well. Good, clean, environmental people here too. Right. Now, what about this one? Again, car A or car B? I'll read you through. Car A, top speed, 20 miles an hour. It's a real goer. Now, range, 80 miles. Refuel time, 7 hours. Price, about $100,000. Well, $108,000. And has lovely luxury features. You can take it from me. I've seen it. Really luxurious car. Car B, top speed, 42 miles an hour. Range 109 miles. Refuel time 20 minutes. Price about $10,000. And the features kind of basic. Oh, well, no surprises here. Seem to be a lot of votes for car B right off the bat. And pretty quick too. No messing about. Right. In the interests of time, I'll consider that solved. People like car B. The one on the left is car A. The one on the right is car B. And to be precise, the one on the left, car A, is a circa 1910 Anderson electric vehicle from Detroit. And you can see it really is luxury. Look at it's got windows all around the edges and a hard top. Real luxury vehicle. And the one on the right is a Tin Lizzie. It's a Model T Ford circa 1910. Now, the interesting thing to bear in mind while I put on the next slide is that in or around about 1910, there was no appreciable difference in the market in terms of the number of gasoline cars, electric cars, and coal-powered cars. Bring them back, coal-powered cars. And so they were really competing for this new technology market of cars, which were replacing horses. Going back to 1896, Edison wrote a nice letter to his engineer, Henry Ford, saying, "Young man, that's the thing, you have it. Keep at it. Electric cars must keep near up to power stations. The storage battery is too heavy. Steam cars won't do either, for they have to have a boiler and a fire. Your car is self-contained, carries its own power plant. No fire, no boiler, no smoke, and no steam. You have the thing. Keep at it." And in 30 years, about 50% of cars in the USA were Fords, and they ran on gasoline. And there wasn't too many electric cars doing good business at the time. You can see here one of the reasons why the Ford Motor Company did rather well. The real price of the Model T Ford plummets over the course of its run because they managed to put into place mass production and therefore drive the cost of production down. You had road networks coming in all through the USA, making cars that went a long distance preferable, and a number of other things like the starter motor that gave gasoline cars a competitive advantage at this time. In contrast, electric vehicles didn't do so well. They went for a niche market of wealthy innovators. And as a consequence, they were outcompeted and went into niche markets where they could survive, like making trolleys and delivery vehicles and golf carts and things like that. Things where being safe, quiet and clean were real advantages. Fast forward to now. This is a graph of the number of vehicles in the UK in the last 10 years. The blue line shows all vehicles, and the orange line shows ultra-low emissions vehicles, which are mostly electric vehicles. And what you'll see is there's, on the left-hand side, is orange really isn't doing so well. Even if we plot it in logarithmic scale on the right-hand side, we see it's increasing, but it really isn't catching up to the number of vehicles very quickly. Which raises the question, how do we model something that hasn't happened yet? We haven't had electric cars being adopted, so how can we have an electric car adoption model? Well, time permitting, I will be covering at lightning speed 3 different perspectives on putting together an adoption model. And within each perspective, I'll be covering one popular model that's used to model the adoption of electric vehicles. These models specifically. So to start off, in economics, broadly speaking, discrete choice models are used. And what economists who look into this do is they collect data on people's preferences for different attributes of vehicles, much like the game we played at the start. And these can be collected through surveys, but also through experiments, just like the game we played. Critically, they break down cars into attributes, things that are good or bad about the vehicle, like the prices, costs, performance, but even kind of nebulous things like design or how they make you feel or the color. In this study that was done relatively recently, choice experiments were run, and 4 attributes were varied. Both real attributes, things like the annual running cost, but also somewhat more future-orientated attributes, like whether they have autonomous driving technology or the sorts of materials they're made from. And rather than having car A, car B, participants had car A, car B, car C, car D. And in each experiment, or rather each choice they had to make, they had a choice between a petrol car, an electric car, a biofuel car, and a hybrid. And the experimental design varied or permutated the other attributes to create different contrasts from which preferences for the different attributes could be inferred. And the researchers used those to create profiles of the different electric vehicle adopters and possible non-adopters to see what sort of things might be in the future driving the adoption of these technologies by individuals. Second perspective, psychological, or scary in the mind. I'll be lightning speed covering a ubiquitous theory or model that's applied in psychology to explain people's behavior, and that's the theory of planned behavior. almost all the studies I've read to do with the theory of planned behavior use data from questionnaires. This is the theory of planned behavior. Rather than having kind of real things in the real world, we have people's beliefs as they express them in the questionnaire. There's more general beliefs that filter into specific beliefs about the behavior, in this case, adopting an electric vehicle. There's beliefs about whether it's a normal thing to do, whether it's the sort of thing that people like you do. There's beliefs about whether electric vehicles are generally good, positive things. And there's beliefs about whether adopting an electric vehicle is something that one is capable of, that is within the realm of possibility. And those three types of belief filter into a sort of measure of will or intent, which, all things being well, and there's no barriers that come up in the meantime, should translate into what people then go on to do. People who intend to adopt electric cars generally should tend to do so. In the article I mentioned, they looked specifically at people who don't have private parking. And that's an important issue at the moment in terms of electric vehicles, because they're primarily charged at home. And so charging them other than at home, at the workplace or in public, is a key barrier to adopting an electric vehicle. So looking at this particular subgroup is quite interesting. And you'll see that they, no surprises here, confirmed the theory of planned behavior, the basic version. But then they also extended it, because the theory of planned behavior is nice and flexible. You can add in extra explanatory variables. And to break down this sort of spider's web of results, what they found, generally speaking, was that this group, if they had positive attitudes towards adopting electric vehicles, and if they thought it was a moral imperative for them to do so, then they tended to intend then to adopt electric vehicles at their next opportunity. And those motivations were preceded by possessing environmentalist style values. But they also found that the circumstances to do with parking and where they lived in the country were also influential on whether they thought they would be able to adopt the vehicle, and then that filtered into their intentions to do so as well. The third model that I'm going to cover really quickly, because to be honest, I don't know all that much about it, is the diffusion of innovations, which is covered in a book by a chap called Everett Rogers, who wrote it back in the 60s. And the last version was 2003. And it is perhaps one of the most influential theories in this area. But at the same time, it's a bit more than just a little model. It's kind of a framework, lots of models within it. It tends to take a broader view. So rather than looking at how one individual would or would not adopt a new technology, it then looks at how the adoption of technology by other people influences other people, influences other people. A process that's termed diffusion of innovations. One thing that I found interesting when I was looking it over, preparing for this talk, was this particular set of 5 elements, which Rogers identifies as being key characteristics for a technology that will diffuse through society really quickly. That is that it's something that has a comparative advantage compared to other existing technologies, that's compatible with ways of doing things now, and the culture and the existing whatnot. That's simple rather than complex, that you can observe, because if you adopt a new practice and you just do it in secret and don't tell anyone, then no one's going to copy you and it's not going to diffuse. So it needs to be intrinsically observable in some way, but also something that you can try out without making a commitment. So in theory, if you have a product that has all of those, then maybe you can retire one day. But the core of this particular theory is these two graphs. When you plot the percentage of adoption of an innovation across time, you tend to get an S-shaped graph like the one on the left-hand side, a sigmoid graph, where initially the adoption is very slow, but then it picks up and it goes really quickly. And then as everyone's adopted it, it gets a lot slower again. And the idea here is that shape of graph is explained by the normal distribution of a quality in people called innovativeness, which is related to the order in which people tend to adopt technologies. So the first sorts of people who adopt technologies are termed innovators and early adopters. These people tend to be, apparently they tend to be highly innovative. They're respected either within a sort of cosmopolitan innovator circles or more generally within normal society. They tend to be rich, maybe. They tend to maybe be opinion leaders, people who are respected and might be emulated, maybe. And within the framework of this theory, those sorts of individuals, when they adopt a new technology, then convey that idea to the majority of people, the people who are perhaps a little bit more deliberate about the technologies they take on, or even maybe they're a bit more skeptical about new technologies. Sometimes these people are also termed followers. I have a soft spot for laggards. I'm one myself, I'm afraid. They're sometimes characterized as sort of people who break up machines during the Industrial Revolution or burn up haystacks when there's a new technology in agriculture. And back in the turn of the century, where I started off, there were people who would go around breaking up roads and sabotaging things to stop cars from being adopted. But generally speaking, these people are very resistant to adopting new technologies, and some people even die without ever adopting them. And that way, diffusion happens. Yes. This study is rather interesting because it illustrates the point I was making a little bit earlier about how this technology really hasn't taken off yet. The authors took the information about the adoption of plug-in electric vehicles and plotted it along the diffusion curve for various countries. And as you can see, most countries here are still in the innovator, early adopter area, where only those influential, maybe rich, opinion leader type people have adopted the plug-in electric vehicles. The exceptions here are Norway and Iceland. They've progressed into the early majority, but that's through quite a lot of effort by policymakers and others to push those innovations through and get lots of people to adopt them. You'll be relieved to know, nearly there. What I'd like to do is another little game to finish things off. and it's on the topic of equity or fairness, because we've talked about models of why people might adopt the technologies, but we haven't really covered whether they should, or how they should, or what ramifications they might be, or who will benefit during that process and who might get left behind. So bear with me as I switch over to the interactive bit. Right. I hope everyone's still logged in, but if not, then there should be a code at the top that you can enter in to get back in. Now, imagine, if you will, that your new job is as a planner for the electric petrol pump company, who are putting in electrical chargers into this city for the new wave of EV adopters. This is the north side of the city. The center of the city is down at the bottom where you can't see. And I've picked up 4 particular areas that you might want to think about putting in your electric vehicle charging points. At the top, we've got 2 areas that are fairly distant suburban areas. They've got lots of motorists, as you can see, and there's lots of potential for home charging in these areas. Down at the bottom, we've got more urban areas that have fewer motorists and less potential for home charging. On the right-hand side, that side of the tracks, it's quite affluent, quite posh. And because it's affluent and posh and people have disposable income, about 50% of people in those areas have adopted electric vehicles already. But on the left-hand side, less affluent areas, it's just 5%. So what I'd like you to do is, you should have access to 100 electric charging points, and you now get to divide them between these 4 areas: the poor suburban area, the rich suburban area, the poor urban area, and the rich urban area. So over to you, and we'll wait a few minutes and have a chat about it. Oh, just like that. Just like that. Comes out of the cloud and onto my screen. And I think it looks like rich urban's in the lead. Rich urban's in the lead. Followed closely by poor urban. But is that poor suburban catching up? It's between poor urban and poor suburban for second place, with rich urban in the lead. Is that rich suburban catching up? Oh, it's looking like, I forget the horse racing term, but everyone's equal, kind of, except rich urban. No, they're in the lead. Right, this was all a bit self-indulgent, so rather interesting. So I wonder why people are picking the rich urban. So I look at the rich urban, that's D, and they've got motorists, some, but they might have a sort of opening for public charging points because they haven't got those home charging, and lots of people already own electric vehicles there. But here's the thing, what about the future? We saw that diffusion graph, and we know that in the future, the late majority will be picking up the technology. So maybe in the future, it would be good to invest in the less affluent areas as well, particularly the less affluent urban area, who might need more public charging. And I see that that's the second one. Got some canny people in the 4 rooms in the different places. But still surprisingly spread. I like the fairness there. With my fair hat on, it would be nice to divide 25% between all 4, and then everyone's got an equal go at it. Anyway, I think we'll move on from there. And this is my last slide, just for you to put any thoughts, questions, ideas up on this board as you like. And thank you very much for listening. Been a bit nerve-wracking. I've got no idea about times, by the way. I'll time check.
We're
We've
doing
got
great, Paul, so feel free to entertain some questions.
Thank you, Ria. I'll have a look at what we've got here then. Great. Oh, thank you very much. Thanks. I'm happy you like the slides and the presentation. What investment should City make to improve transportation equity? I should prefix this by I don't know anything. I'm confounded by these questions as much as anyone, but for a city, they might want to think about zoning for public charging points, or they might want to consider some sort of regulatory package for the companies that will be putting them in.
Hey, Paul, quick interruption. Here at DPI, we have a question in the room. So we're going to pass it over to Brian for a second.
Sure, carry on.
Hello.
Hello,
Professor. Could you hear me?
Sorry.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for your presentation and many insightful quiz as well. My name is Brian from UIC. I would like to ask, because you mentioned a lot, and of course the topics of this EV. I'm sure that EV is one of the solutions that we can provide in the city, especially if it's related to the public transportation. But currently there are a lot of massive productions of EV as well, not just in America, but also in Asia Pacific, especially China, Japan, and Korea. I think that the mass production itself would have a negative impact to the environment. So do you think that the mass production of a mass production of private EV would have a worse impact compared to the EV itself, operating EV itself in the public transportation? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And an equity question. I like an equity question. The answer is I don't know, because the answer is always I don't know. But what I would say is if they can green up the power supply, then I've read some articles that suggest that it'll work out nicely if they can green up the power supply and make it all nice and sustainable. But it's a question of if they can manage that. There are downsides to the mass production. Another thing that's going on is they're trying to reduce the amount of cobalt in the batteries, I think. And from what I've read, this should reduce the price, which is nice, but it also should make it more sustainable given the low quantities of cobalt about for making batteries out of, and the difficult places where they get the cobalt from. I'm sorry I can't give much of a better answer. As I said, I'm not that clever, unfortunately.
Do we have any questions here from Cardiff?
Hey, Paul, there's also a question in the chat as well, in the Zoom chat, not just on the screen here.
Right, into the chat. Let's have a look. I will use this laptop. There are several laptops in front of me, as well as a big computer screen.
For you.
Yes.
It says, does industry follow the same model as Rogers with rich innovators and laggards?
Oh, I see. Does industry follow the same model as Rogers with rich innovators and laggards? Does industry follow the same model? They're definitely aware of the model, and it's been around for ages. Everyone knows about it. Marketers use that model. You might remember me mentioning the ideas of observability and trialability. Well, why do you think you can test drive your car before you buy it? Why do you think they leave them on the forecourt so everyone can have a good look at them? They definitely know about these things, and in some ways they're sort of common sense, put into the form of a formal academic model. Yes, so they're definitely aware of that theory, I'd say, if I've understood the question.
Any more
Right.
questions, whether at DPI or on the phone in other locations?
More questions?
Was it too interesting?
Hello?
Well, everyone is saying it was very interesting.
Thank you, Paul.
Oh, thank you. Right, should we leave it there before I faint?
Yeah, well done, Paul. Thank you very